you mentioned the soccer field, and I always soccer is my first love, I like to say, but my passion is the NFL. But even even the soccer team, Steve, whether it was the national team or even like the regular teams like Nacional from Medellin and America de Cali, how much drug money was in soccer during that time as well?
Well, these guys were the owners of the teams. Even Rodriguez Gacha, who was one of the original founders of the Medellin cartel, was owner of a soccer team there in Colombia. Um, my wife and I befriended a Colombian couple um, that actually his wife helped us adopt our first daughter.
Oh.
And he's a professional businessman and he came from a well-to-do family. He was educated in Germany. And the reason he went to Germany is because he wanted to become a professional soccer coach. So he
Mhm.
comes back to Medellin after graduating, picks up an assistant coach position, and he's in Medellin working. And this was, long before '93 when Escobar was killed. And he saw Rodriguez Gotcha show up, and so he realized who the owner of the team was. And then later on, he saw Escobar at one of the games, and he said, he's an honest businessman. And that's the thing that these narcos down there, they bring such a bad reputation to Colombians because it's a beautiful country and Colombians are great, fantastic people. They're some of the most accepting people I've ever run into. But you've got this element of the narco traffickers plus the insurgent groups. Colombia has the distinction of having the longest running civil war in the history of the entire world. So you've got all these elements that bring this bad reputation to this country. But anyway, my friend, he got out of it and he started an eyeglass business just because he didn't want to be affiliated with, he
Mm.
knew what was going on. He didn't want anything to do with those people. And you know what? You get in bed with those people, and eventually when they ask you to do something and you don't do it, you're going to pay a price. So I think he was probably, in my opinion, one of the smartest businessmen I've ever met, just a smart person because he was smart enough to get away from those people.
Yeah, there was the famous story of, the Colombian soccer team from like 91 to 94 when the World Cup was in the United States. They were a dominant force. They were really, really good. And the goalkeeper for them, who has this like iconic video of him saving a ball doing like a kick from behind. It's unbelievable. Steve, I'll send you a video afterwards. It's one of the craziest things. But Renee uh Iguita,
Higuita,
I think.
Higuita.
Iguita, there you go. A very iconic player for them,
Yeah.
long like dreadlock hair. Also, he famously went and visited Pablo Escobar there, and then they left him off the national team. And
Right.
then fast forward to them during the World Cup, they have the famous incident of the own goal with Andres Escobar, and
Right.
then that leads to him coming back to Colombia, and then he's killed out on the streets. Was it? You mentioned the Wild Wild West before, Javier. Is that like the perfect analogy for what it was like during that era?
Yeah, yeah. The Wild Wild West, we put it because when Escobar traveled, he had bodyguards. He had 10 cars with him, about 40, 50 bodyguards with him. They'd go into restaurants, they would close them down, nobody in, nobody out. Then he would pick up the tab, give people money. You know what I'm saying? So it was ostentatious. The paintings they were buying Monets, whatever, $1 million paintings. There was a lady in Medellin who I don't know where she had the connections, but all the traffickers used to go with her. So tons of paintings. We Steve talks about the famous painting in at the jail. Owned by Pablo Escobar. You had some Boteros and a Dolly painting there, but and it was just the money was the tons of money that they were getting. So soccer teams that were buying them. Yep, and I remember the Rene Gita. We found photos of him inside the prison where the soccer team would come in, and then the famous they call it. Remember in New York the autogol, which you mentioned
Mm-hmm.
there. The other Escobar, who was an innocent guy, goes back to Medellin, and I know the story. He's at a bar, and there's a trafficker who worked for Pablo Escobar. It was just at a bar, and it was just, you know what, the trafficker, and we raided his ranch later on, found a lot of dope. But basically, it was I lost a lot of money because of you, to the righteous, to the innocent Escobar, the soccer
Right,
player.
Andres Escobar.
Yeah, yep, Andres Escobar. And then all of a sudden it started into this guy started getting pissed and more pissed because of all the money he lost on that game. And I remember that game. In fact, Steve and I watched it in New York City because we
Oh
were
wow.
there. Yeah, we were there for the trial of La Kika in New York City. That Danny Munoz was getting back to the soccer player. The trafficker ends up killing him because he is so mad at the money he lost. And the trafficker worked for Pablo Escobar. I'll always remember that. So it was just like they said, it was just a jealousy type. I lost money off of you. That's how they killed him. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was at a bar in around Medellin where the soccer player was killed. But that's the famous auto goal, which is famous in Colombia. Anybody who saw that game, we saw it. I'll always remember that. We made a goal by mistake, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, you're a soccer player, but yeah.
Steve, let me ask you a question here. This might be a curveball, but does that death of Andres Escobar happen if Pablo Escobar is still around?
Um, yeah, probably.
Probably.
I mean, the guy he has no conscience. He has no remorse. He has no sense of guilt feelings. His ego is completely out of control. It's all about power and Pablo. The famous Hispanic machismo, which is typically more associated with Central Mexico and Central America. But, I have no doubt that Pablo would have had him taken out. He might even had him brought to the prison and let him try to explain himself and then kill him.
I just like the sound of it.